So into your space, giving yourself time to land here and letting yourself kind of acknowledge that the yin space begins, your practice begins, and this is time for you to feel some quiet, some stillness, and get whatever it is that you get out of yin. It's one of the practices I think that can be so different for everybody, what it is that they take from it, what attracts them to it. So let's start by just feeling the seat below us. So noticing that you're sitting on the floor. I think you all are. Noticing your legs, your spine lifting up out the pelvis, shoulders, the arms, wherever they land, and the head at the top. And then bring your attention to your breathing. You start to notice the in-breath and the out-breath. Just noticing it's there. Not trying to change it. Observing the rate of the breath. The energy of the breath as you come to practice this evening. Noticing if it feels like it flows quite easy or if it's a little bit stuck. Again, not necessarily trying to do anything about that, but just noticing it for now. Might help guide you through the practice. And then we'll take our fingers together, thread them through and push forward and round the spine, dropping into a little flexion, curl through the spine, drop of the head. Maybe press the hands forward, feel the shoulder blades pull apart. And then when you're ready, take an in-breath, lift the arms up and over. Lift up through the sides of the waist, maybe a bit of wiggle through the waist and the ribs. Big deep breath in and out. And then unclasping the hands, bring one hand down to the floor, doesn't matter which one. And then take that into a side bend. There might be a bit of a kind of wiggle with it. If you notice tissue wants to move, if it feels quite stuck, just let yourself be in the shape as gently as you can come into it. And then that hand that's in there is going to come to the outside of the opposite leg. And you're going to come into a twist, but kind of with a fold in the twist. So your gaze is down. There's a little curl in the spine. And then lift the chest and lengthen through the spine. You might press down into the back hand to push you a little bit higher. Just feeling the difference in the twist there. And then softening out of that, coming back to the center. And then again, pressing the hands forward and up for a bit of reach through the waist again. And then doing that on the opposite side, arm coming down, bending into that side. Maybe a bit of a twist, wiggle into it. Maybe it feels just enough to be in that shape. And then again, bringing that hand in the air down to the side of the opposite leg. The hand on the floor maybe goes back a wee bit and into that kind of folded twist. Gazing down. Nice. It can be a nice way of getting into some of those stuck bits in the middle of the back, coming into twist this way. And then staying in the twist, but maybe walking the back hand in towards the body, pushing length into the spine, bringing the gaze more up. Doesn't need to be up, but just away from the floor, looking to the side. Taking a breath there. And then coming back round to the center, rolling the shoulders. And then taking a bit of a circle just to get the spine moving. So don't overly think this. Just let yourself move in circles and you'll be doing what your body's asking you to do. And then go the other way. Nice. Just getting a bit of movement through that middle part of the back. Through the waist. Nice. And then coming back to the center just for a breath. To notice where you are just from those couple of minutes of moving. And then when you're ready, we'll take our first yin pose. So our first pose is going to be lengthening the legs out and coming into a forward fold. Okay, so a basic forward fold to start with. You might want, which I think my legs do, my back does today, you might want to pop a cushion under the knees or sit in a cushion if the backs of the legs are particularly challenged today. Finding your forward fold. You might want cushion to lay your arms on, elbows. Just kind of find where can you sit where you can start to feel some sensation, but not looking for the backs of the legs to be absolutely at a tight tension. Somewhere where you can feel a bit of softness, a bit of space. A bit of space or somewhere where the pose could go to. You might not necessarily know where that is. Come into a place where I'm aware of it, I can feel it, I notice there's some stretch, but I'm not right at the end of that. You can kind of feel where the shape might go. I think sometimes when we go right to that end tension, that limit, there's nowhere else to go but come backwards from it or hold ourselves into that edge. Sometimes when we come in more at an easier edge, almost round the outskirts of it, we discover some movement, some stretch or sensations, places we might not otherwise notice. Maybe the backs of your legs are used to feeling it here. When you come in a bit softer, you feel the back of the lower back or the hips or vice versa. Feeling your way. Things ease, then you might move a little bit more to find the next edge. Having that curiosity about where it might go. And in that sense, more following an instinct or a feel than sheer willpower or determination or drive. Follow where it leads you, not where you direct it to. And finding that steady breath to guide you through it. Noticing that if it becomes stilted or shortening or maybe faster, then perhaps there's a little bit more ease to be had in the shape. You come back to a steady rhythmic breath. Or being able to come back to, if you notice that the mind wanders, can sometimes affect the breath as well. You think through things, drift off to to-do lists or worries or stresses, it can change the breath as well. Come back to the breath, steady it, and give those thoughts a little bit of filtering, a little bit of push away. All you need to know is being here in a shape, noticing sensations, being curious, and finding a steady breath. And when I say it like that, I'm sure that was about 5 things, so that is more than enough. All you need is these 5 things. Or being guided by them. They might shift a little bit. Breath might become a little bit unsteady. Come back to it. Sensations might drift. Come back to them. Guided by the poses and the feel. We might take about another minute here. I don't need to tell you guys, you can stay for longer if you want. If you come out sooner, just feel where you want to go, find a place, and we'll meet you in the next pose. All just finding our own vibe, our own rhythm, that practicing together, connected in the practice, quite individual in our experience of it. We might take another 2 or 3 breaths here to take us to the 5 minutes. So thereabouts. And then as always, when you come out of this pose, take your time. Come out of it easy, no rush. Bend the knees. And you might want to take a few seated windscreen wipers. Might feel quite nice, or you might want to just sit back. Maybe let the arms take a bit of weight back in the body. Having some connection. Anything that feels right for you. It might be something else completely, like a wee sort of cat-cow seated. And our next pose is going to be lying on our back, so whenever it is, find your way there. There's loads of time, and we're going to take time between the poses. It might be tonight, find you enjoy a bit more stillness between transitioning, or maybe a bit more movement. So just again, be guided by your energy and that sense of feel. And just so you know where we're coming to, the next pose from our back, we're going to place the soles of the feet together, the knees open, and we'll come into a reclining diamond. You might want some cushions underneath the thighs if they need a bit of support, if it feels like the thigh bones are kind of hanging in midair, give them a little bit of support. Or you might want to pop a cushion under your hips if you need a little bit more space. The knees want to drop further. Maybe a cushion under your head, which I think is what I'm needing this tonight. And then my suggestions that the arms are open wide to give that bit of opening. If it feels too spacious, too open with knees and arms open, then just find where the arms want to go. Sometimes when we're feeling a bit like we need to retreat in, this can almost be more than we're comfortable with. Finding our way into this. And again, we'll take about 5 minutes here. Just let yourself settle into the stillness. Find the steady breath. Notice the sensations. Nice. And maybe notice where the energy and your thoughts are. If we're drifting into them. Or maybe you hadn't even thought about it till I said that. Sign that you're with the pose and in that presence. Doing your best in the practice to be with that shape, pose, sensations, presence, guiding yourself away from the thoughts. Not because thinking is not a good thing, it has its place. And particularly if you know you're tend to be overactive in your mental processing and busy with thoughts, then using this to build that skill of being able to be with the present and what is here and now. Being with your body, the whole of you. And having that distance from the thoughts. They're still there. We are feeling, being, thinking. We are feeling, thinking beings. Practicing the being. And often we do the thinking so well anyway. Notice what you notice here. Where are the sensations? How do you describe the sensations to yourself? Or having a sense of the colour, the shape, maybe even the vibration of the sensations, whatever makes sense to you. Or feeling brain doesn't always work in words. It might tap into a bit more of the unconscious. So not dismissing anything when we notice the sensations. Allowing that to be there, to notice that. And of course, your nice steady breath. Place we can come back to. Come back to in our practice. And it's a place we can come back to any time you like in life. The moment of noticing the breath can feel like 10 minutes of breathing space from everything else. The moment noticing the breath in ourselves can give us pause to not respond as quick. Maybe check in with what our actual response is to something. What it is we need or want. And maybe take another 3 or 4 breaths here. This is an idea, guide. Chance for a last wee sigh in the position. When you do come out of the pose, my suggestion is that you walk the feet just gently away from each other to then roll onto the sole of the foot and bring the knees in from there. It can be a gentler way on the hips of coming out of it. And just feel what you want to do. It might be nice to drop the knees inward for a little kind of just counter pose, or maybe there is a few sort of windscreen wipers, or picking the knees up, circling the lower back. Maybe noticing where it feels its response to where it's been. So often for me, it's my lower back goes, oh, as I come out of pose like that. So maybe that's where you need to give it just a little bit love and attention. Maybe it's just nice to have a bit of stillness in a different shape. When you're ready, come back to your feet on the floor with your knees bent, roughly about hip width apart. And then from there, we'll take the right foot and pop it onto the left thigh. So coming into a little figure of 4. And there's loads of options from here. So if that feels a bit stuck in that right hip and difficult to get that there, you can walk the left foot out further and that'll give you a little bit more space. Or you walk it in, or you reach through, which my hips don't let me do. If that feels comfy for you, you can reach through, grab hold of the left leg. And we'll stay here for not quite 5 minutes. We'll maybe stay for between 2 and 3 minutes. And just feel in a place where you can come into stillness there and feel some sensation. It might be that the right hand presses a little bit onto the right thigh and that feels quite comfy. And not getting caught up in finding the full stretch. I think often this is one that we recognise from places where we're trying to really get the stretch and ease it out. Come in gentler. Maybe the sensations creep on as you stay there. Again, feeling a steady breath. Steady in the breath as you stay here. Notice what you notice. Notice the breath. Is the breath steady? Is it shortened? Notice the sensations. And again, being curious about those. Might get a sense of a colour, temperature, vibration. It doesn't matter what it is, how you describe or notice the sensations. It's noticing them, being aware of them. Once you understand your body, once you understand your edges, your patterns, and we can start to become aware of what's normal for us, what's typical of us. What's useful for us, and what maybe isn't so. Settling into that shape, that breath. Enjoying the yin. Taking it in. We'll stay here for a little bit longer. Maybe another 30 or 40 seconds. Of course, knowing that you can stay as long as feels right for you. There's always a point where we decide that's enough, we'll come out. And not necessarily putting a limit on that if it feels like a little bit longer might be nice. I often think it's like that when you're in the shower and it's a really good shower and you don't want to come out of it. Eventually you do. Just enjoying it if it feels like somewhere you want to linger. There might be another couple of breaths if you want to be guided by the time. There might be a few more if you're going by your own sense of time. Whenever it is you come out of that pose, just take your time, placing the left foot down if it's in the air, uncrossing the right, and give yourself a moment to notice. If you're anything like me, you feel pretty lopsided now. So just kind of have maybe a bit of a sway, kind of letting it just find its balance back through the body. Or there might be a lengthen out the legs or a hug in the knees. Just really trust yourself again. Might be quite nice to let the knees be open. And the opposite of where we've been, both knees open. And giving yourself time. And just knowing that the next pose we're going to do is the same pose on the other side. So if you want to come in sooner, then just find your way into it. No rush. So the left will come onto the right. And again, almost enjoy the process of getting into it. Be curious about that. We can sort of default into, oh, I know this is where to go or how to do it. Maybe go a little bit easier, slower into it. Play with where that right foot is on the floor, further apart. Maybe it lifts up. Even if it didn't on the other side, or if it did and it doesn't feel right on this side. And just find out where do you want to be here, what feels right. Finding a place where you can be with it with some ease, some space, somewhere to go. But also feeling those sensations, noticing them, being with them. And then there's that steady breath. Where are the sensations? What are the sensations? How are the sensations? Forming that sense of your experience in this shape. Gathering information about yourself without a need to judge it. Just knowing it, noticing it is enough. It might be the odd little adjustment. If you stay with this pose, or direct in the breath, particularly if you feel tissues start to move, release, it can be nice to direct some breath into it, and almost often think it's like kind of blowing on the burning embers, just keeping the sensations alive. And it might take about another minute here. Noticing if the mind wanders, come on back to the pose and the practice. And doing that gently. We're doing our best not to be critical of ourselves. Being really gentle with yourself in the practice. And yourself in general with yourself. There might be another 2 or 3 breaths here before you come out this shape. And again, taking your time to unhook the left leg and finding a place with both feet on the floor. And again, maybe just a bit gentle movement, kind of balance the sensations up again. Integrate it in. Knowing that our next pose is going to be from our back as well. We're going to gradually move away from our back. But the next couple will still come from this position. So come in when you're ready to find your feet back on the floor again and your knees about hip width apart. And then we're going to lift our hips up and take them slightly over to the right, just a little bit. And then you're going to bring your left leg in towards your right leg. Your right leg's going to cross over the left, all the way over, so it's kind of dangling over the left thigh. And then your arms are going to open and you're going to roll your knees over to the left. So we're coming into a little twisted roots twist. If you find you quite like it, but it feels a little bit kind of, I don't know, aggressive is maybe too harsh a word. Harsh, that's a good word. Then you pop a cushion underneath your left thigh. Add that up as you need, and it might just take some of that harshness out of the twist. If it still feels too much, uncross the legs and come just into your usual twist. You might also like a cushion just at the back of your pelvis. Sometimes that can give a little bit of support. Maybe feeling what you need there. to help give you that Goldilocks level of sensation. Not too much, not too little, just enough that you can soften into it, settle into it, and find your yin place. And notice how that is. What do you notice? What do you feel? How do you experience this shape? Steady breath. Easing into it. Being curious about this pose. And we so often are drawn to where the most intense sensations are, where the most noticeable sensations are. Also, you let your attention drift to the upper body, the back of the shoulders. Maybe they can settle. The upper back, the arms. Maybe noticing how that shifts the pose, if at all. Having your whole body in this shape. Not just drilling into where the most obvious sensations are. Taking up the space, noticing the space that you're in. You might really be loving the twisted roots. It might at some point, like it has for me, just become that little bit too much. You come back to an untwisted twist, if that makes sense. Just really trusting that instinct, that guidance from the feel. Maybe there's a little bit of awareness of your brow. Noticing its expression. Maybe softening the brow, the cheeks, the jaw. Might help you soften through the pose. And we'll take another minute here. Or that's my suggestion anyway. You take whatever time feels right. That might be another, maybe 3 or 4 breaths here. The Bring you towards the end of this pose. Again, just whatever feels the right amount for you. And come out of this one gently. You do come out, just gently wind your legs back to the center. Give yourself time to uncross them. Balance the hips back up to the center. And then for a moment, just check in and then notice where do you want to move, or how do you want to kind of go through this transition. So not necessarily always just heading into windscreen wipers or this thing you always do. Just where really do you want to bring some movement? Just let yourself unwind out that shape. Come back to a bit of balance, I suppose. A bit of ease. Where do you need a bit of care and attention with movement? And we're going to do that pose same on the other side. So if you are less inclined to linger with me, then you might find your way into it when you're ready. You're going to get there when you're ready by lifting the hips slightly over to the left and bringing that right leg over towards it. Then crossing the left over right, and then winding your way into the twist. Knees coming over to the right. And again, just play with this. It's not one we do that often. So play with it. Give yourself time. Now, where do I need a cushion? Where am I okay? What little nook and cranny needs a bit of support here? Give yourself that time to really be curious about how to set it up. And then settling into it. Maybe seeing how does the right hip soften into the floor. The thighs soften towards each other. Again, really feeling your way with it. And you might decide, actually, I'm going to uncross the legs. That's enough twist for me, thank you very much. And that's the one that I need. It's perfectly okay. Just really trust yourself with that. It's okay to be you. And part of being you is finding how this shape really fits for you tonight. Taking into account your anatomy, your posture, patterns of tension in the body, your energy tonight, how you feel emotionally tonight. There's so many things that will determine how you find what's the best shape for you tonight. I think often that can be the challenge of yin. Really trusting yourself to know that for yourself. But you do. You very much do. It's that steady breath, threaded all the way through the pose. The breath creating the movement within the stillness. The breath responding to our energy. and also helping settle our energy. You might again take a gentle awareness to the forehead, the brow, middle, third eye. Feeling a bit of space, creating a softening. Noticing how that maybe creates a gentle shift. Steady breath. And we might take another 3 or 4 breaths here in this pose before easing our way out. As many as it takes for you to feel ready to come out of the pose. And again, being gentle with that transition when you do come out. No rush. Just go really gentle with the tissues that have been in that yin tension. So there is a tension along with a release. Just give it time, ease. And then again, when you uncross the legs, just bringing the hips back to the center. And then giving yourself just that pause before you move to notice, actually, where do I want to move? How do I want to move? And following that. It might feel completely random. It might be real kind of, I don't know. It's that pandiculation, isn't it? Bit of this, bit of that, just following the flow. And knowing that we're going to come onto hands and knees next, whenever you're ready. So taking your time, no rush, taking your time to get there. Coming onto hands and knees. And just letting yourself be on hands and knees before we even think about the pose we're going to go into. We've been on our back for so long, so give your body a moment to have that weight through the arms. Feel what it feels. Feel other areas connecting or release. And then the pose we're going to go into when you're ready is melting heart. So we're going to walk the hands forward, dropping the chest, either keeping that reach through the arms or popping down onto the elbows and forehead to the mat. It's that kind of version of hips above heart and feeling how you soften into that. So you might, I quite like at the moment having my elbows bent and my forehead onto my forearms. You might prefer to reach the arms out, but maybe a bit of support through the chest if it feels too much with the arms outstretched. Feel where you want to come into that melting heart. So we're taking our spine into different position now, letting it open out. Quite literally a different viewpoint, perspective. And we'll take about 5 minutes here. Different perspective. Completely reordered the poses as we came into them than what I planned. There's a shift of perspective. Going with the flow, noticing where everyone is, what might be the best flow from one to the other. And notice where the sensations are here. Maybe through the shoulders, the arms, the upper body. And maybe you notice them around the hips, the lower back. There's no right or wrong. Just noticing what you notice. Finding your way to soften into them. And then, of course, there's a steady breath. Nice, steady breath. Flowing through the pose. How much can you give to gravity here? Give into gravity, but without collapsing. Softening, easing. You might enjoy a breath into the tummy. And feeling on the out breath the sense of letting go. Again, notice the forehead here, the brow. In this position here, you still be soft and spacious in that space in the brow. Maybe another minute here. If it feels too long, come on out. Some cat cows. If you want to stay longer, you know you can. And then take in another 2 or 3 breaths. If you do like to be guided by that structure of 5 minutes. And easing your way back out the pose when you're ready. Taking your time to walk the arms back, finding your way into some cat cows on all fours. And Again, just notice where it might be nice to move, knowing that the next pose is also going to be from all fours. There might be somewhere that just feels really nice to go. Might be cat-cow sways, it might well be coming into a down dog. Maybe you need something a bit more active just to release out of that one and release the back of the legs. Feel what's right for you. Giving yourself some time here. And then just so you know where we're going when you're ready, we're going to send the hips back and we're going to curl into child's pose. My suggestion is knees together and arms by your side, particularly after where we've been. Maybe a cushion under the forehead if you want it, or head to one side. But maybe coming into that kind of more tucked in child's pose to soften through the back. And Claire, this is probably going to be your last pose before you head off early. So it's my suggestion that that's the child's pose you come into. There's always the option to do it on your back if you'd rather kind of curl into it in a different position. Coming into a flexed spine in a way. Yeah. Round in the back. Finding your way here. You might decide you need some cushions in between the knees, between the calves and the back of the thighs. It can be a little bit easier on the knees. Maybe you hug a cushion or two. And staying with child's pose. Your version of child's pose. Nice steady breath. Noticing how it feels to be here. Noticing the sensations. Making any adjustments you might need as you stay here. A little tweak. Easing into the nooks and crannies as they show themselves. A steady breath. How much can you let go in this pose? Not forcing it. Noticing maybe there is a little bit more space there. A little bit more give. A steady breath. stay here for about another minute. Again, it's just a guide. That feels like it could become an endurance test. Come out of it sooner. Stay as long as feels right for you. There might be another 2 or 3 breaths here if you're still in the pose. Maybe a few more. If you have come out of the pose, just give yourself time to take a bit of movement. And then come onto our back in the next pose. Back to our back. Give yourself time. Nice and easy. Again, there might be, as we say, a few random moves, probably not random to you, but it's finding your way gradually onto your back. We're going to do just a little bit more of stimulation at the hips. That's a good way of putting it. So once you come onto your back again, just give yourself time to be there. Give yourself time to come back to this position again. And then we're going to cross the legs over again. So we're going to take right over left, all the way crossed over. So the thighs cross over each other. And then we're not going to be in this pose for as long on each side. Let's see if you can pick up the knees. You might hold the right knee. There might be one hand on both, maybe for you, which isn't an option for me. You can hold the left one or the shin of the left. Find a place where you can hold into those legs. And if that's not an option for you, then let your left foot be on the floor, and that's going to be enough. Yeah, coming into that cross, we're just looking for a little bit of stimulation into the outside edges of the hips. Settle the breath. Seeing if the hands can hook onto the kneecaps without gripping. And we'll just stay here for a couple of minutes. Of course, for longer if you really, really love this position and it feels like it needs longer. Steadying the breath, feeling the sensations. And maybe just that little bit of attention to the forehead, the brow. Soften cheeks, jaw. Maybe you can even get a sense of the ears relaxing and the teeth relaxing. Taking another 2 or 3 breaths here before transition out the pose, if that feels enough. When you do come out of it, take your time. Again, give it time. Maybe walk the feet apart. Notice if the thighs want to move, the legs want to move. Whatever feels right for you. And then just when you're ready, doing that same thing on the other side, crossing left over right. Just had to think about it. And again, drawing the knees in, feeling where you can hold the kneecaps, where it feels a good place to let the hands rest. It's okay if the feet go back down to the floor. I intend to do that in this pose. Nice steady breath. Just let the breath ebb and flow, rise and fall. And we might take just another 2 or 3 breaths here on this side before easing our way out of it. And when you do come out of it, come gently, feet back down if they're in the air, uncross the legs. And again, a moment with the legs uncrossed before is feeling where the body wants to move. It might not be the legs, it might be the arms. Might need to do something after so much focusing on the hips. And then we have our final pose before Shavasana. So she says, wondering what she's done with her cushions. When you're ready, and just take all the time, it's just so you know where you're going. You're going to place a cushion or two underneath your hips and settle the hips onto it. Okay. And give yourself, we're going to take at least a bit of time here with just simply knees bent, feet on the floor. And cushion under the hips. And then let's keep the hips where they are. And can you bring the arms so that the elbows are bent and the hands are slightly upwards? So a kind of, I don't know what you call that, half square over the arms. If that feels good. If it feels like you can't kind of place the elbows and the hands on the floor, then maybe go for arms just outstretched. Okay. So sometimes this one can be a bit tricky on shoulders. And the elbows can go on the floor, but the hands are left kind of wandering and it puts a bit too much pressure on the shoulders. So if that's the case, just let the arms open, letting the hips release. And we're simply going to stay here as our last pose for a few minutes. Taking your time in that pose. And again, there's a nice steady breath. Feeling the breath, feeling the pose, and just being here in this shape, in the practice. being yourself. Allowing yourself to really soften into this. Nice steady breath. And you might stay here for another 2 or 3 breaths. You might decide to stay here longer, have a shorter shavasana. Really be guided by what it feels like for you and when feels right for you to come out of this pose. When you do come out of it, as always, take your time. Give yourself some time to kind of notice if there's a bit of movement that's needed. And then coming into this final few minutes, finding a really, really comfy position. Maybe getting some layers, blanket, popping the lights off if that feels helpful for you. Whatever you need to give you that space at the end here to really be comfy. And settling into that when you're ready. You might take 2 or 3 slightly longer out breaths to really, really come into that rest and digest place. And then I'll be quiet and meet you back here in a few minutes. Gosh, you know, you can stay there as long as feels helpful for you. If it does feel that ending practice with me here is the right thing for you to do, then give yourself time to gradually come to a position that you can bring practice to a close. That might be seated, it might just be another lying position that feels somehow different. And take your time. And when you do get to that seat, just give yourself time to be there. You take a big breath. There might be a little wiggle. I know I want to have a big stretch arms. It doesn't mean you do. But there might be that kind of just letting maybe the ribs have a wiggle or the head have a little side to side. Maybe it's nice to do a few of those circles that we did. A little bit of movement that then brings you to that place of stillness to finish. Yeah, nice. You can settle in here. So a final little pause, checking in, and then bringing your hands to heart center so that you know practice is coming to a close. It does go off the mat, and give yourself this moment of gratitude for yourself, thanking yourself for being here, for taking the time and making this space, both in your diary and also in yourself. And thank you for me for being you and for being here. Namaste.